Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. Now, this is the daily chart of silver provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. And you can see here, I've drawn the big overhead resistance lines here. You can see that silver tried to challenge that 19 price. It got to about 1850, but the big resistance there is sitting around 19. You can see that. The other one is 26. So we're now on another uptrend. Let's pull up the MACD to see where we are on that. And we're nearing a crossover, but it's just such a long-term chart. It's hard to see that. And then we want to pull up the volume here as well. And that's just absolutely crazy. You can't even describe what that volume is. Unprecedented is the only way to describe it. So those are the two targets we're looking at. That 19, can we get through 19? And then if we get through that, can we get through 26? There's a lot of resistance there, years and years of resistance. So I wanted to take you over to what's going to be the main story of the night, and that's this financial story that broke today. And this has been a long time coming. I've warned before that they're going to use a cyber threat. That's going to be one of the false flags they're going to use. And it seems that they've broken this story now. So this story is about bank hackers stealing, some say 300 million, some say a billion, we don't know how much. But that hackers have stolen this money. So the thing you want to keep in mind here, this is what's going to be in the back, it should be in the back of your mind as we're thinking through this entire thing, is how do the hackers actually get the money? Because we know that you might be able to move money from one account to the other, but how do you actually get the money physically in your hands? And secondly, how is this impacting the SWIFT system, and what is the involvement in Russian? We're going to see the Russian involvement here as we dig into this story. So I'm going to read this story. This is from the New York Times. This is the epitome of government disinformation. You can't think of a newspaper that would be more of a Langley, CIA, Mockingbird press disinformation news source than the New York Times. They are it. They are the government mouthpiece. So this is the story. There were a lot of stories I tracked. I tracked down the story itself. I tracked down the name of this Carbanak, whatever this group is. I tracked down Kaspersky and the whole thing, but it really is summed up in this New York Times article. So we're going to go through the whole thing. Palo Alto, California, in late 2013, an ATM in Kiev, interesting there, started dispensing cash at seemingly random times of the day. No one had put in a card or touched a button. Cameras showed that piles of money had been swept up by customers who appeared lucky to be there at the right moment. But when Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky Lab, keep that in mind, these guys are at the very center of this whole thing, Kaspersky Lab was called to Ukraine to investigate, it discovered that the errant machine was the least of the bank's problems. The bank's internal computers, used by employees who process daily transfers and conduct bookkeeping, had been penetrated by malware that allowed cyber criminals to record their every move. The malicious software lurked for months, sending back video feeds and images that told a criminal group, including Russians, Chinese, and Europeans, how the bank conducted its daily routines according to investigators. So here's the first, there's a lot of red flags in this story, but here's the first one. The malware sent back video feeds. Really? You're telling me that these bank computer terminals have webcams installed on them? and that those webcams are controlled from the same terminal that's being watched. Now, I could understand how you could watch a terminal. I can understand how you'd have a security camera watching a bank employee. But I can't understand how you could have that camera actually connected to the terminal itself and accessed by that. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's a big hole in the story right there, and there's a lot more. Then the group impersonated bank officers, not only turning on various cash machines, but also transferring millions of dollars from banks in Russia, Japan, Switzerland, the United States, and the Netherlands into dummy accounts set up in other countries. In a report to be published on Monday and provided in advance to the New York Times by Kaspersky Labs, says that the scope of this attack on more than 100 banks and other financial institutions in 30 nations could make it one of the largest bank thefts ever, and one conducted without the usual signs of robbery. The Moscow-based firm says that because of non-disclosure agreements with the banks that were hit, it cannot name them. Now think about that. You have a Moscow-based firm that has agreements with U.S. banks? Really? Officials at the White House and the FBI have been briefed on the findings, but say it will take time to confirm them and assess the losses. Kaspersky Labs says it has seen evidence of $300 million in theft through clients and believes the total could be triple that, but that projection is impossible to verify because the thefts were limited to $10 million a transaction, though some banks were hit several times. In many cases, the hauls were more modest, presumably to avoid setting off alarms. Really? The majority of the targets were in Russia, but many were in Japan, the United States, and Europe. No bank has come forward acknowledging the theft, a common problem that President Obama alluded to on Friday. Oh, isn't that convenient? When he attended the first White House summit meeting on cybersecurity and consumer protection at Stanford University, he urged passage of a law that would require public disclosure of any breach that compromised personal financial information. But the industry consortium that alerts banks to malicious activity, the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, said in a statement that our members are aware of this activity. We have disseminated intelligence on this attack to the members, and that some briefings were also provided by law enforcement entities. The American Bankers Association declined to comment, and an executive there, Douglas Johnson, said the group would let the Financial Services Center statement serve as the only comment. Investigators at Interpol said their digital crime specialists in Singapore were coordinating investigation with law enforcement in affected countries. In the Netherlands, the Dutch High-Tech Crime Unit, a division of the Dutch National Police that investigates some of the world's most advanced financial cybercrime, has also been briefed. The silence around the investigation appears to be motivated in part by the reluctance of banks to concede that their systems were so easily penetrated, and in part by the fact that the attacks appear to be continuing. Now, let me jump over real quick here. I don't know if you remember, but the name of the group was the Carbanak Group. This is a link to a virus total, a scan you can see done on the 16th of December 2014, 2 months ago. And you can see backdoor Carbanak was detected by Agnitum software at least 2 months ago. So how long have they known this is going on? The managing director of Kaspersky's North American office in Boston, Chris Doggett, argued that Carbanak Cyber Gang, named for the malware it deployed, represents an increase in the sophistication of cyber attacks on financial firms. Quote, "This is likely the most sophisticated attack the world has seen to date in terms of the tactics and the methods that cyber criminals have used to remain covert," Mr. Doggett said. And in the recent attack on Sony Pictures, which Mr. Obama said again on Friday had been conducted by North Korea, the intruders in the bank's thefts were enormously patient, placing surveillance software on the computers of system administrators and watching their moves for months. I'm assuming that it's talking about keyloggers. Can you imagine a system administrator that would install a webcam? I don't know. This is laughable. The evidence suggests that this was not a nation state, but a specialized group of cyber criminals. But the question remains how a fraud of this scale could have proceeded for nearly 2 years without banks, regulators, or law enforcement catching on. Investigators say the answers may lie in the hacker's technique. In many ways, this hack began like any other. The cyber criminals sent their victims infected emails, a news clip or message that appeared to come from a colleague as bait. When the bank employee clicked on the email, they inadvertently downloaded malicious code that allowed the hackers to crawl across the bank's network until they found employees who administered the cash transfer systems or remotely connected ATMs. So we're to believe that the bank employees who are checking email on their computer are also linked directly to the computers that administer the ATMs. Right. And that they're not watching the connected users through their firewalls. They're not seeing these remote IP addresses controlling these machines. That's utterly absurd. Then Kaspersky's investigator said the thieves installed a RAT, remote access tool, that could capture video and screenshots of the employees' computers. Again, that's ridiculous. It doesn't even make any sense. The goal was to mimic their activities, said Sergei Golanov, who conducted the inquiry for Kaspersky's lab. That way everything would look like a normal everyday transaction, he said in a telephone interview from Russia. The attackers took great pains to learn each bank's particular system. While they set up fake accounts at banks in the United States and China that could serve as destinations for transfers, two people briefed on the investigation said that accounts were set up at JP Morgan Chase and the Agricultural Bank of China. Neither bank returned requests for comments. Kaspersky Lab was founded in 1997 and has become one of Russia's most recognized high-tech exports, but its market share in the United States has been hampered by its origins. Its founder, Eugene Kaspersky, studied cryptography at a high school that was co-sponsored by the KGB and Russia's Defense Ministry, and he worked for the Russian military before starting his firm. Big surprise. When the time came to cash in on their activities, a period of investigators said it ranged from 2 months to 4 months. The criminals pursued multiple routes. In some cases, they used online banking systems to transfer money to their accounts. In other cases, they ordered the bank's ATMs to dispense cash to terminals where one of their associates would be waiting. But the largest sums were stolen by hacking into a bank's accounting system and briefly manipulating account balances using access gained by impersonating banking officers. The criminals would first inflate a balance. For example, an account with $1,000 would be altered to show $10,000, then $9,000 would be transferred outside the bank. The actual account holder would not suspect a problem. We found that many banks only check the accounts every 10 hours or so, Mr. Golanov, Kaspersky Labs said. So in the interim, you could change the numbers and transfer money. The hacker's success rate is impressive. One Kaspersky client lost $7.3 million through ATM withdrawals alone, the firm said in its report. Another lost $10 million from the exploitation of its accounting system. In some cases, transfers were run through the system operated by the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, or SWIFT, which banks use to transfer funds across borders. It has long been a target for hackers and long been monitored by intelligence agencies. Mr. Doggett likened most cyber thefts to Bonnie and Clyde. So there you go. Here's some big red flags here. SWIFT, that's the system they kicked the Russians and the Chinese out of. And it's monitored by intelligence agencies. But let's look at another one of these ridiculous claims here. Kaspersky client who lost $7.3 million through ATM withdrawals alone. Okay, let's do some quick math on that one. So we've got $7.3 million in ATM withdrawals. Now, I don't know about your bank, but my bank, which has a special account, a business account, and one of the most trusted accounts, allows me to withdraw $500 a pop. So we withdraw $500 a pop, and it's going to take us 14,600 transactions to take out that $7.3 million. Divided by 365, which is the number of days in the year, they're going to have to do 40 transactions a day of $500 for 365 days in a row to withdraw $7.3 million through ATMs, and no one caught that. That's laughable. So let's take a look here at Eugene Kaspersky. This is the guy. We've got a Russian who's broken an American story. That's kind of interesting. Broken by the New York Times, given to them by Kaspersky Labs. Let's take a look at Kaspersky here. He was born in 1965 as a Russian specialist in information security. He's the head of IT security of Kaspersky Lab, which was established in 1997 based upon previous antivirus technology, etc., etc. Education. Kaspersky developed an interest in mathematics during his early teen years while at school. He attended extracurricular classes in advanced mathematics and physics and specialized course organized by Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. Later, after winning a mathematical competition, he was selected for enrollment in advanced technical school at Moscow State University, studying physics and mathematics. In 1987, Kaspersky graduated from the mathematical faculty of the Institute of Cryptography, Telecommunications, and Computer Science, an institute co-sponsored by the Russian Ministry of Defense and the KGB, where he studied mathematics, cryptography, and computer technology. And we'll jump down to the personal life here. Eugene lives with his third wife, has 4 children. On April 2011, Russian media reported that his 20-year-old son Ivan had been kidnapped and subsequently freed 3 days later. His personal fortune is estimated at $800 million in 2011, so this guy's a billionaire. So what's going on here? Well, you know, just from going through this story, Kaspersky, a Russian security firm, the New York Times, the story stinks to high heavens. But what's behind this? Well, what is behind this is that they are planning to take all the money. Now, the money is pretty much already gone. There's nothing we can do to get it back because the money's been stolen already, and there are promises that can't be paid, but they need a cover story. They need a story that they can spin so that they can explain why they have to do a reset of the system. When the reset of the system comes, the money in the 401ks, the money in the bank accounts, the money in the stock accounts, the money in the commodity accounts, the money in the bonds, the money in all pensions and all retirement accounts, all that money is going to go poof. It's going to be gone in one instant. And they're setting up their excuses for why it happened. They've got their boogeymen they've got in ISIS with their fake beheadings and fake assassinations and things they're doing. They've got their fake cyber attacks where they're going to have an excuse to shut down the banking system and reset everything. That is the reason why it is so important that you make sure that you're protected from their system, because this is coming down very, very fast. And we'll talk to you next time.